Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and today we are taking a look at the Ross model of 1912 Cadet Rifle. This is a 22 rimfire, straight pull, basically youth training rifle, or just sporting rifle, that was made to sort of be a scaled down simulacrum of the Ross military rifle. Now, there were a couple different iterations of Ross military rifle. We've got a 1905 pattern here. This came after the model of 1910 Ross, but this was a rifle that was adopted as the standard Canadian infantry service rifle prior to World War I, and in fact saw use in World War I until it was kind of incompatible with rushed wartime British ammunition supplies. And well, I have a whole series of videos on the .303 caliber Ross. But as an effort to expand manufacturing and offer a new and desirable product to the market, in 1912, the Ross Rifle Company released a .22 caliber youth version of the rifle. Development on this began in probably late 1910 or early 1911. There was actually a patent filed on some of its features in July of 1911, and then the rifle was released onto the market in 1912. Now, I said this was the 1912 Cadet Rifle, and that's because it was primarily used by the Canadian Cadet Corps. This is sort of a youth military group in Canada, still is today, was back then as well. Sort of pre-military, sort of like one of the scouting organizations, but very specifically focused on military skills and development. And they did marksmanship and drill, among other things, and they needed a rifle, but they didn't want to give 14-year-old kids .303 caliber M1910 Ross rifles, so they get 22s instead. And allegedly, the Canadian government ordered 10,000 of these, although it's unclear if they were all delivered. A lot of them were, but we're really not sure if the full 10,000 unit order actually went to the Canadian government. Anyway, there is also a second version of the rifle, which is the Sporter, which is mechanically exactly the same, has basically all the same features, except instead of a full-length stock, it's cut down part way. For basically, you can save some cost with some of the front hardware. And this is a rifle that sold for $14 to the public in the Ross Rifle Company's catalog. The Cadet Corps got them for $10 a piece, and the Canadian Militia got them for $8.75 a piece. The Sporter version was $7.50. We have a 22-inch or just under 22-inch barrel here, which is standard. The Sporters, apparently, you could also have an option at an 18 or 20-inch barrel if you wanted it. But like I said, very few of the Sporters appear to actually have been produced. They're very hard to find today. So let's take a closer look. Let me show you how they did a 22 caliber straight pull rifle to match the straight pull Ross 303. All right, so here's the whole thing, and there are actually a number of elements here that are specifically copied from the military 303 Ross rifles. You can see here the buttstock design is pretty darn similar. The Cadet rifle has this kind of unusual, interesting donut-shaped bolt handle. Well, the Ross 1905 has a very similar one right there. There is a trap in the buttstock for a cleaning rod. Now, the 1905 Ross predominantly uses a rear notch sight, but the 1910 Ross had a rear aperture, and they put a rear aperture sight on the 22 Cadet rifle. And then lastly, the nose cap is very, very similar, if not straight up identical. Well, it's not actually identical, but the exact same design of nose cap. In catalog pictures, there were actually cadet rifles shown with bayonet lugs and with bayonets, but none were ever actually made. All right, let's take a look at some of the markings. On the top of the receiver, we have Ross Rifle Company. Now, this rear notch sight is not original. Someone added that at some point along the way. So if I take off the elevation adjuster for it, you can see that full marking. Normally, there would not be a dovetail up here at all. Anyway, it's also marked patented, and we have 1912, the introduction date. There is a Dominion of Canada proof and an inspector's mark right there on the barrel. And then the only other marking on it is the serial number, which is just under 15,000 on this one. I should also point out, on the military Ross rifles, it's not uncommon to find a whole bunch of different markings for different units that they were issued to, and you'll have, some units on there and then crossed out and other units replacing them. The military cadet rifles can have the exact same thing, and you'll see just that same sort of marking on the buttstock. This one, however, appears to be a commercial sale rifle, and it doesn't have any of those military markings on it. Now for controls, this is a little bit of an unusual gun to operate. So first off, there is a safety here, and it's just a trigger block. So when the safety's pushed over to this side, pushed over to the right, it just physically blocks the trigger from moving. And when you push it through that way, then the trigger can operate. So the action is currently closed, and in order to open it, I have to push this release lever. So I push that in, I can then open the action all the way. It's a single shot rifle. I drop in one 22 rimfire cartridge. This is designed for 22 long rifle, but it will also work just fine with shorts or 22 longs. So drop the cartridge in there, and then I push the bolt forward, and it's under spring pressure now because I'm cocking the striker as I do it. Once the bolt is all the way forward, the striker is cocked, and I can't open this again until I press the release lever here. Now, if I just want to extract a live round that I haven't fired, I can push the release, and the spring tension on the striker will actually pop the bolt open, and if the extractor is in good shape, extract a full live round and pop it out of the action. Alternatively, if the bolt is closed, I fire the rifle, bang, like so. I still can't open it. I have to depress this lever and then open the action. So let's take this apart. Let me show you how that actually works. Up here at the front, I have one screw holding the nose cap onto the stock. And then this middle sling swivel is actually the other attachment screw. This holds the action onto the stock, and it is captive. So I unscrew it, I can drop it down to there, and then I can slide that off the front, and we can just lift the action up, and there we go, pull it off of the stock. Just for what it's worth, there's the safety. You can see it's just a block behind the trigger there. Now, with the action, I'm going to unscrew the rear sight, which is also the end cap of the receiver, push this little guy in, and then I can unscrew it. There's no spring tension in here, so you don't have to worry about it flying off the end. I should also mention, by the way, that you can adjust elevation just by rotating this knob at the back. So that's dropping it. This elevates it, and there are actually 3 little notches in there, which I believe, there we go, there's the third one, are 25, 50, and 100 yards. All right, but once the rear end cap is off, I can pull the bolt assembly out. All right, we have a striker right there. That's going to hit the firing pin. So that right there is our firing pin. That's the extractor. That's the slot for the ejector, which is built into the bottom of the action. You can see it right there. Now, we have 3 components here. We have a trigger, a sear, and the locking bolt. And I'm going to pop these out so I can show you how they work. There's just one pin holding them in place. There we go, push that out. These 3 come apart. Well, there's another pin holding these 2. We'll leave that in place. You have 2 sear notch, essentially surfaces here on the bottom of the bolt assembly. This is the lock that actually holds the bolt forward in place. So when the bolt's all the way forward, there's the lever that's normally in front of the trigger guard. This comes up behind that surface and prevents the bolt from opening. Then you also have this one, which is going to hold the sear in place. When I close the bolt, this is going to catch on the striker, and it's going to pull the striker back and hold it in the cocked position until I pull the trigger. When I do that, this pushes on the bottom of the action, and essentially it just pulls the sear surface down, which releases the striker to fire. Now you may be wondering how the spring's set up in there. Well, we can go one step further. I'm going to punch out this pin There's still no actual spring tension here. This is kind of a neat system. When I take that out, I then have this unusual sort of piece. I can then pull out the striker. So there's our striker. And then I'm also going to pull out the firing pin. All right, that is the firing pin. And the striker is going to hit it coming forward and just push it slightly forward in the bolt face to fire a cartridge. Now inside here, we actually have the spring. So there's a little pin right there. There's a spring inside pushing on that rear end cap that's being held in place by that pin. What happens here is the two tongs on this guy sit on either side of that pin, and when the striker comes back, this piece is what's actually compressing the spring inside. So that puts spring pressure on the whole system. All right, and then the last thing I want to show you here is there's this little coil spring between the bolt catch and the striker sear, and it keeps these two parts pushing. So they're always going to be pushing that direction, both of them simultaneously. So this is always trying to hold the striker in place, and this is always trying to hold the bolt in place. And that just acts, the fact that they have a single pivot pin there and a spring pushing them apart. So this is a really pretty clever, very simple setup. And there we go. There is a Ross 1912 Cadet rifle, detail stripped for you. As you probably figured out from the model number, this was introduced in 1912, and production continued until the end of the Ross Rifle Company in March of 1917, and that's when the whole thing went fully bankrupt and the factories were seized by the Canadian government. Total production is a little bit unclear. There are two main batches of these guns. You'll find them with just sequential serial numbers. There are a few known examples in the 1,000 range, like 1,009, very, very low in the 1,000 range. And then numbers appear to jump to about 11,000 and continue to 18,075. There is also a military serial number range, which has been documented between A and F. So they're three-digit numbers, basically 1,000 guns per letter, starting with A001, then B, then C, then D, etc. And they go up, documented examples show through the F series. Now, we don't know for sure that the regular civilian sale ones were actually their own independent serial number range, as opposed to being mixed in with other commercial Ross rifles. Ultimately, production of these appears to be somewhere between 13,000 and 17,000. And unless someone discovers some better data from the factory, which seems unlikely at this point, we just don't know to any better level of specificity. So anyway, production ends in 1917. These remain very functional 22 caliber sporting and plinking and general purpose rifles today. The action is pretty cool. It's important to know how to use it. By the way, if these get particularly worn, it is possible for them to start acting like auto-ejecting guns, where you close the bolt and when you pull the trigger, it fires and then automatically opens the bolt and ejects the empty case. That may seem pretty cool, but that is not how the rifle is supposed to work, and it is a sign that the locking surface is getting pretty worn, and you should definitely take the gun to the gunsmith if you have one that's doing that. Otherwise, they are a cool and fairly rare piece of Ross rifle history. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.